I want to get a feel of the room. Make some noise if you're doing bad. Okay, you're gonna bum me out, I can already tell. Now, I'm not nervous because this is actually my second time ever doing stand-up. First time was years ago when I was 17, and I'm going to tell you the set that I gave that night, but first I have to tell you how that night went. So when I was 17 years old, a friend of mine asked me if I'd be willing to do stand-up or something at a coffee house fundraiser she was doing because she hadn't found enough people to sign up to perform. I agree because I want to help, but I'm nervous. I had never written comedy before. I didn't know what was funny, and I eventually settled on some personal anecdotes. You see, I'm a recovering camp counselor. Child-free for 3 years, going strong. And, I write all this stuff, and I'm proud of it, but I'm worried. I don't know if it's good. I think it's funny because, I'm confident. But I'm sending it to my friends, and I'm being like, is this good? Is this good? The night comes. I'm terrified. I'm running a bit late. I'm running in a frozen parking lot, and I push open the doors, and I'm immediately faced with this large banner that's covered in pictures of fetuses that says, "This is a life. This is a life. This is a life." Y'all got it a little quicker than I did. Because it wasn't until I saw 2 more posters that I realized I was about to perform stand-up comedy at a pro-life coffee house fundraiser. Not exactly my demographic. So, immediately, I think I'm in a lot of trouble because the stories I planned on telling aren't exactly the greatest advertisement for kids. Like my experiences would be more in line with a condom commercial, not a pro-life coffee house fundraiser. But I'm worried, I feel like I'm in too deep now. I can't run. They've seen me. And they call me up and I do my set and I'm fully willing. I'm like, okay, it's gonna bomb. Every comedian needs that. This is the worst ever bomb story, but it goes well. These people, they're aware, like they're my age. They're aware that I'm making jokes. I'm doing it to be funny. But there's this one woman, she doesn't laugh. Doesn't crack a smile. You're doing a great impression of her. I don't need that right now. I think everyone gets the idea, but I appreciate it. Thank you. And she comes up to me after my set and says, "I don't think jokes like that were particularly appropriate for this event." And I say, "I'm sorry you feel that way, Sister Margaret." Yeah, she was a nun. I could have led with that. I did not. I wanted you guys to have a little surprise. And honestly, that annoys me because it's such a cop-out to me, because nuns are pro-life because of their religious beliefs, but they're also celibate, even though those same religious beliefs state that you should only have sex to have kids, which is just hypocritical to me. If you're celibate and pro-life, it doesn't make sense because, if you don't play a game, you don't get to have an opinion on the rules. But it's not her fault if she doesn't like my comedy. I can't help that. She can't help that. But I feel like for her to come up to me after the fact, just has this superiority that I'm not a fan of. Was she right for doing that? I'll let you guys decide. Because my first job was as a camp counselor at a Lego Robotics camp. Which is a good camp. It's for all those kids who wish summer had a lot more school. So, I took the job because I love Legos, but I hate Lego Robotics because I'm not good at programming or computer stuff, and that makes sense. I'm an English and film major. If I knew programming, I'd be way too employable. But I take the job, which obviously means I'm working very closely with children. And there's one thing I learned working with these kids, it's how to not name children. Because you ever hear a kid's name and know that a nanny is doing most of the upkeep? Like that. Because I met a little white boy named Kenshin. And both of his parents were white. Still a mystery to me. I didn't ask. You can't ask. And they're going to be fun. And then I also met a little boy named Thurston. That was his legal name. I saw the files. Which baffles me, because that means his parents held him for the first time and said, this baby that took 9 months to build, he looks like a Thurston. Just like his old man, am I right? Yes. So, I can joke about it, but I get it. You know, because in 10 years, that kid's going to have to write a college essay about overcoming adversity. And you know, if you're a rich white boy from Virginia, you're kind of grasping at straws for that as is. And I know what you're thinking. I see it on your faces. How can you say that? You know, Peter, what adversity have you ever overcome? So I'll remind you, I worked at a Lego robotics camp twice for 2 summers. Even the kids in the 60s who went to Vietnam only had to go once. And I think that's where I lost the nun. But by far the most frustrating thing about this work experience was just how little guidance I would be given when it came to my campers. And that's not the kids' fault, that's more on the administrators. Because every week I'd just be given a list of names and a high five. By the way, one of your kids doesn't speak any English. Yeah. One week there was this little boy named Enzo, and he was French. He didn't speak a word of English. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but I can't speak any French. The only person who could was his cousin, who happened to be in the same group as him. And you know, she was helpful, but I would feel so bad just like pulling her away from her work just to be this middleman between Enzo and I. So more often than not, I just end up sitting next to him typing shit into Google Translate and just hoping he'd get the gist. And later that day, I went up to my boss and I was like, you know, why is this like, why? Like, how is this fair to Enzo? This doesn't seem healthy. It doesn't seem right to me. Like, why would he be put in a situation like this? And she just shrugged and said, Enzo deserves the American camp experience. And she walks away. You know, I roll with it. That's all you can do when you work with kids. Just roll with the punches and hope that you're doing the right thing. Not every counselor at this camp could adapt like that, though. And for background on this next bit, every counselor needed to have a walkie-talkie on their person at all times. And these walkies, they weren't private, so if you said anything into them, everyone in the building could hear. And there was this one little girl. I wasn't in charge of her. She was like kindergarten age, so she was in a different group, different part of the building, but she had issues. So she, drew up this color chart, which she gave to her counselor, who in turn gave it to my boss. And the chart was pretty simple. It was a color scale that went from green to black. Green meant good and black meant bad. And she's young enough that that's not racist. So, whenever this kid would act up, and I mean like act up, she's like pushing over tables and screaming, like she just found out her name's Thurston, like bonk. Her counselor would say in her radio, code black. And my boss in the other end of the building would know to go down there and, diffuse the kid. Now, only her counselor and my boss knew about that system. Until one day. So my group was in the building lab. And just like it's a classroom a little bit bigger than this room, this individual desk, kids are working at them, doing whatever, and this guy Nathan, he's in charge of that lab. So he's standing at the front of the room, he's looking over everything, just making sure everything's fine. And then suddenly our radios crackle and we hear code black. I don't think anything of it. Maybe that's a bad reflection on me, but one of my kids was showing me what he claimed was an elephant, so I was preoccupied. Nathan doesn't let it go though. He's asking me if I know what it means. I don't. Our boss suddenly runs past our door and Nathan pokes his head out. He's like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, everything's fine, don't worry about it. And she runs down. Nathan doesn't let it go. He pulls out his phone and he Googles code black plus school. I don't know if you've ever Googled code black plus school, but I'll save you the work because in normal school codes, code black is the signal for when there is, quote, danger in the building, such as an intruder. And I had never considered Nathan a man of action. But as soon as he read that, he leaps over a desk, whips the blinds down, yells over his shoulder, kids, get in the corner! Enzo's sitting there like a goldfish. I'm standing there, elephant in hand, just very lost at how quickly this happened. Then he slams off the lights and puts his whole body against the door like there's Freddy fucking Krueger on the other side of it. Now, there wasn't an intruder. I don't think I'd present it like this if there was one. Because why would there be? Who would walk past a Catholic middle school in the summer and think, there's probably a Lego camp in there I can invade? And do you know how messed up this camp is that the fact it was in a Catholic middle school barely rated a mention? So I turn the lights back on, I open the blinds, and Nathan left because apparently the stressful situation he invented took a lot out of it. Don't laugh, it's heartbreaking. He has pre-traumatic stress disorder. But guess who then had to field a lot of questions from 10-year-olds about what just happened, why it happened, and what an intruder is. Can't say I never taught him anything. At the end of the day, my boss pulls me aside, and she's mad. She's like, how could you let this happen? Like, it's my fault. She's like, how could you be so irresponsible? Why did you let this happen? Why didn't you stop it? And I take a step back, and I look at her, and I say, Enzo deserves the American campus experience. That is all for me. Thank you very much.